Some police officers seem to think that they are immune to the law, as if the law doesn't apply to them. Well, not today. Let's take a look at these ex-cops getting even just a fraction of what they truly deserve for their bad choices. First up, we have Michael Dotro. He was in court for arson and murder. Dotro had started a fire that killed more than 2 people.
Everyone to understand where I'm coming from with regards to this, especially if there's going to be any appellate review of this sentence. I want those judges to know the sentence to be imposed in this particular case is because Mr. Dotro, through his conduct and his admissions, spanning from 1998 to this year, yes, he's caused very specific damage to Captain Enderkel and his family, Ms. Zog, to Ms. Dotro, to his own parents, to his families, to his brothers. But what he's really done, and what we're going to be left with after he's walking out the door to spend the next third of his life in prison, is allow people a basis to say that our system of justice has no integrity. How could it when we've allowed this particular individual like him here in Middlesex County, here in Edison, to do the things that he's done, similar to what we see on the news every day from other parts of the country. Because of what this individual has done, because of him and people like him, victims are afraid to come forward to be part of the criminal justice system and get the relief that they're entitled to from being victimized, because they have no faith in it, because they don't know who to trust. Even more importantly, we have other individuals every day who put on a badge which represents honor, service, and integrity. Without question, go out there every day, leave their family behind to protect an entire community with hopes that they can make it through the day, through the end of their shift, so that they can go back home to their family and lead a normal human being life. Because the life of a police officer is not a normal human being life.
That was what the judge had to say after he had sentenced him to 20 years in prison. Now we have Robert Frater. He was accused of hiring a hitman to murder his wife. It ended up going up in flames for him once he actually got caught.
The Herman Hospital last night, investigators were combing the garage of her home in Atascocita. Neighbors told investigators that they heard the first gunshot,
followed by a scream and then another second quick gunshot, and then a suspect was seen hiding by a tree. The vehicle came around the corner and picked him up and left.
Investigators, though, found no evidence of robbery or sexual assault or any other motive for the shooting. That's when they began questioning Bob Frater, the victim's estranged husband. Relatives say Frater and his wife had been in a bitter battle over custody of their 3 children for 2.5 years.
Did you originally have your wife killed?
No, I did not. I'll put it this way, too. I mean, if anything happens to her, that's one of the things I was thinking about on the way over here is like, what the hell am I going to do now? I mean, me battling for custody was also relying on her to be paying me child support of $600 or $700 a month.
Robert Frater didn't seem so shocked that he got proven guilty. Maybe he had accepted it at that point.
We, the jury, find the defendant Robin Allen Frater guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment signed by the foreman. Does either side wish to have the jury poll? Seated. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, as I call you.
Now we have Michael Sipple. He was in court for police brutality after causing the interaction you just witnessed.
And Pate says that officer grabbed his left arm and demanded to see his ID, which was in his pocket at the time. Now, he refused to show the ID this time. Pate says the original officer joined and grabbed his right arm. He says he could not have given his ID at that point with both arms held. Pate says he kept repeating, "My name is Christopher Pate. You have my ID." He says he does not remember how he ended up on the ground, but he remembers being tased and punched. Pate says handcuffs were placed on him.
Here is how the sentencing went down, as well as what different parties had to say on the matter.
Michael Sipple guilty of assault in the 3rd degree.
Today's decision in the Michael Sipple trial was shocking to some. The prosecutor on the case says one piece of evidence made all the difference.
Body camera footage was the most important piece of evidence in this case. I think everybody can say that after seeing that footage.
One person who sees that, Christopher Pate's attorney.
What has happened here is extraordinarily rare. It's extremely unusual that an officer is not only charged, but ultimately determined that he's guilty based on the evidence that exists.
Sipple's attorney was also shocked in the opposite way. He says this decision could have a chilling effect on how officers do their job.
And they're going to be less willing to approach people, to use force, because they're going to be afraid that they're going to get charged criminally.
But Fody says for Pate, this is justice.
It ended with an outcome that confirms that it wasn't fair what took place, and that he didn't deserve to have a facial fracture, that he didn't deserve to have what happened.
Here is William Denby Jr. He was accused of murdering his wife.
I had no right doing what I did. Obviously, I wasn't thinking. I was in a place where I had no control over my actions. I can't explain it. I can't understand how or why I did what I did. I may never know. But one thing I do know, that Stewie's well-being should be the #1 priority. But it isn't. Shame on you, Cheryl. I don't know.
That is enough.
I don't know.
That is enough,
Mr. Denby.
You know what? I've had enough. You cut her throat twice. You stabbed her 8 times. You cold-blooded killer. I've had enough of
The reaction you just saw was that of a family member of his late wife. Here are a few words from the family of the victim.
Our Holly was taken from her son and our family and friends because of one man's violent acts. His brutal, unprovoked attack on her person ended her life. Holly was held against her will. She was battered, and when she found an opportunity to escape, she did. She was pursued by her husband, who intended to kill her.
A wonderful, warm, caring person. She was the epitome of sunshine.
Holly met this man, and she thought she had met somebody that represented somebody that was a strong man, strong person to have a family with, somebody, defender of women and children, and she was ready to...
That was Holly's family, but then William's mother spoke too.
And I want to tell you that Bill was absolutely never an abusive person, the most easygoing, respectful person. You can ask any of his co-workers or anybody who's ever dealt with him.
William ended up getting 20 years to life in prison for what he had done. Now for Eric DeValcaneri. He was a cop that unnecessarily shot an African-American man for simply backing his car into his own garage. This is how the sentencing went down.
Eric DeValcaneri on count 1, the Class E felony of involuntary manslaughter in the 2nd degree. I sentence you to a term of incarceration in the Missouri Division of Adult Institutions of 3 years. On the unclassified felony of armed criminal action, I sentence you to a term of incarceration of 6 years in the Missouri Department of Corrections. Those cases, or rather those counts and sentences, will run concurrent with one another for a total term of incarceration of 6 years. And the parties have a right to expect that no matter what I hear, I will only consider factors that are appropriate and that I will disregard those that are inappropriate. And that is what I've done here, and as a result, I've concluded as follows. There are a number of facts in this case that are both aggravating and mitigating, sometimes all at the same time. First and foremost is this undeniable and uncontested fact. Cameron Lamb is dead, and Eric DeValcaneri killed him. That's undisputed. Cameron Lamb was by all accounts a helpful and loving son, brother, father, and friend. People who have contacted me and who I have heard from today have described him as funny, caring, giving. Miss Gray called him a protector, a jokester, and my favorite of all the ones that I read, not a saint, but our angel.
The judge seemed to be on the police officer's side. Who gives someone 6 years for murdering a man?
Was found guilty in 2019 for making false statements to the grand jury about this 2016 confrontation when he punched a man in a hospital lobby.
Next, we have John Romer. As you just witnessed, he took part in police brutality in 2016. He was then taken to court, and this happened.
It is therefore the order, judgment, decree of this court that the defendant, John Preston Romer Jr., is hereby sentenced to 5 years confinement in the Institutional Division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
There couldn't have been a more severe aggravated perjury. All the lies that he told to cover up his excessive force.
He got 5 years in prison, which isn't really a life sentence, but it definitely gives him time to think about what he did. Next, we have Daniel Holtzclaw. He was accused of multiple accounts of sexual harassment and assault, as well as robbery and burglary. It's unbelievable that he used to be a cop.
All right, the verdict seemed to be in proper order. This is in the District Court of Oklahoma County, State of Oklahoma, the State of Oklahoma versus Daniel K. Holtzclaw, case number CF 2014-5869. Verdict, count 1, sexual battery. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn in the above entitled cause, do upon our oaths find as follows. Defendant is guilty of the crime of sexual battery and set punishment at 8 years. Count 2. Procuring lewd exhibition, not guilty of the crime of procuring lewd exhibition. Count 3, burglary in the 1st degree, Defendant is not guilty of the crime of burglary in the first degree, nor lesser included. Count 4, procuring lewd exhibition. Defendant is guilty of the crime of procuring lewd exhibition, and punishment is set at 5 years. Count 5, procuring lewd exhibition. Defendant is guilty of the crime of procuring lewd exhibition, and punishment is set at 5 years. Count 6, defendant is not guilty of the crime of stalking. Count 7, defendant is not guilty of the crime of sexual battery. Count 8, defendant is guilty of the crime of forcible oral sodomy, and punishment is set at 20 years.
And it kept going. Daniel got a total of 263 years behind bars.
Let me ask the jury, is this your verdict, so say you all? Yes. All right. Counsel, would you like to examine the verdict forms?
Not to say no.
No, Your Honor. All right. Mr. Holtzclaw, if you and your attorneys just come forward. Mr. Holtzclaw, this jury finds you guilty of the various counts. You will be remanded to the custody of the Oklahoma County Sheriff for formal sentencing set January 21st, 2016 at 10 o'clock a.m.
Next, we have Derek Chauvin. He was accused and found guilty of killing George Floyd. Here is how the judge handled the sentencing.
I am not basing it on any attempt to send any messages. A trial court judge, the job of a trial court judge, is to apply the law to specific facts and to deal with individual cases. And so, Mr. Chauvin, as to count 1, based on the verdict of the jury, finding you guilty of unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony under Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 2 paren 1, it is the judgment of the court that you now stand convicted of that offense. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute section 609.04, counts 2 and 3 will remain unadjudicated as they are lesser offenses of count 1. As sentence for count 1, the court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months. That's 270. That is a 10-year addition to the presumptive sentence of 150 months. This is based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority, and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd. You are granted credit for 199 days already served. Pay the mandatory surcharge of $78 to be paid from prison wages. You're prohibited from possessing firearms, ammunition, or explosives for the remainder of your life. Provide a DNA sample as required by law. Register as a predatory offender as required by law. And then you will receive a copy of the order and also the attached memorandum explaining the court's analysis. Anything further from the state?
If this needs to be said, we just ask that it be executed forthwith.
He got 22.5 years in prison.